Hey heroes, welcome to another fantastic episode of History of the Marvel Universe. This channel is sponsored in part by Patreon supporters. If you would like to contribute and vote in monthly polls, then you can sign up for an amount of your choosing over at patreon.com/MaryMarvelite. The link is in the description below, along with other places you can find me. Previously on the channel, we've explored the history of the alien antimatter universe called the Negative Zone, and the origins of its ruler, the savage insectoid creature Annihilus, the living death that walks. We talked about how he used a device called the Cosmic Control Rod to maintain his strength for centuries, and how he came into conflict with Earth's first family of heroes, the Fantastic Four. He teamed up with, and subsequently fought against, another denizen of the Negative Zone, Blastaar, the living bomb burst. But when we last left off, Annihilus had successfully regained his rod and used it to assert his dominance over the Negative Zone. For the start of this video, we turn our attention to the fabled Norse gods of Asgard. During a battle with the giant fire demon Surtur, the rainbow bridge that connected their home to the mortal realm was shattered. Without the Bifrost to anchor it, the continent of Asgard slowly began to drift from its own dimension, eventually dipping into the realm of the Negative Zone. Annihilus infiltrated the Golden Realm, killed several members of the Elite Guard, the Crimson Hawks, and abducted a number of other Asgardians. This led to a battle with the thunder god Thor, in which Annihilus was victorious. However, he was ultimately defeated by the Allfather Odin, who banished him from the city. Odin also restored the Rainbow Bridge, once again allowing passage between Asgard and Earth. This only made Annihilus more interested in eliminating the Asgardians and securing control of their realm. With the city still residing in the Negative Zone, he seized his opportunity to attack when the Allfather fell into his week-long Odin sleep. Annihilus abducted Odin and began draining his godly energies in an attempt to endow himself with true immortality. However, his location was discovered by the god Heimdall, and Annihilus was challenged again by Thor. Well, technically this was a mortal named Eric Masterson who had previously merged with Thor and wielded his hammer and powers. In any event, Masterson was victorious when he struck the Cosmic Control Rod, seemingly causing it to explode. This appeared to be the end of Annihilus, but he later recovered and returned with his Cosmic Control Rod intact. During the crisis surrounding the Infinity Gauntlet, he attempted to take advantage of the cosmic unrest by personally launching an invasion of Earth alongside his scavengers. This was undone along with other damage to Earth when Nebula claimed the Gauntlet and used it to restore reality to the state it was in before Thanos killed half the universe. Not long after that, Annihilus encountered an energy vampire from a reality called the Ultraverse. Known as Rune, this creature attempted to steal the Cosmic Control Rod, but was defeated and imprisoned by Annihilus. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the Negative Zone, Mr. Fantastic's Counter-Earth counterpart, the Brute, enslaved the Leonine Tyannans. We talked about them in the previous video, but they were the earliest known race to have lived in the Negative Zone. It was their attempts to seed the antimatter universe with life that led to the birth of Annihilus. As for the Brute, he was created when the High Evolutionary made a copy of Earth called Counter-Earth, but led a very different life to that of the Reed Richards we know. Anyway, detecting a powerful energy pulse, the Fantastic Four traveled into the Negative Zone to investigate. Using the Tyannans as his personal army, the Brute battled the FF, Annihilus, and Blastaar. However, these three factions forged an uneasy alliance to ultimately defeat the Brute. Mr. Fantastic also helped the Tyannans isolate themselves from the rest of the Negative Zone, saving them from Annihilus and Blastaar's vengeance. Following this, the two Negative Zone warlords joined forces with a third, Syphonn. He was relatively new on the scene, but had developed a machine called the Conqueror Wheel, which would allow them to access the Earth dimension. They clashed with Adam Warlock, who revealed that Syphonn intended on betraying Annihilus and Blastaar. In the end, Warlock and his allies succeeded in defeating Syphonn and destroying the Conqueror Wheel. Blastaar allowed the heroes to go free and leave the negative zone, and Annihilus agreed, swearing off any future partnerships. He next battled the Fantastic Four when their prototype Fold Space Transceptor malfunctioned, stranding them in the negative zone. They stowed away on Annihilus' spacecraft before clashing with him and ultimately escaping once again. But for the next part of our tale, we must turn our attention back to Earth and a group called the Gideon Trust. This corporate entity can trace its origins back to its namesake, Gregory Gideon, a wealthy industrialist who clashed with the Fantastic Four. After his death, his terminally ill son, Thomas, was taken by the Shaper of Worlds and transformed into the cosmic-powered Glorian. In the aftermath of all of that, the Gideon Trust was formed from Gregory's estate and guided by an enigmatic man known only as the Colonel. Seeking to plunder Negative Zone technology, they founded a group called the N-Explorers and sent them into the antimatter universe. This group included Peter Petruski, aka the Trapster, aka Pastepot Pete, who was aware of Annihilus and the Negative Zone from his time as a member of the Wizards' Frightful Four. While often seen as a joke, the Trapster, true to his name, succeeded in springing a trap on Annihilus, allowing the N-Explorers to steal the Cosmic Control Rod. This conflict was witnessed by the Fantastic Four, who had pursued the N-Explorers, as well as their new ally, Kenneth Tennyson. Better known as Hell Scout, Tennyson was the descendant of 17th century Puritans who were stranded in the Negative Zone by a mysterious storm. The heroes prevented the N-Explorers from taking the rod back to Earth, but in the ensuing battle the device was damaged, causing negative energy to seep into the positive universe. Taking advantage of the confusion, Hell Scout attacked a weakened Annihilus from behind, killing and beheading him. The Thing then forced the broken pieces of the Cosmic Control Rod back together, saving the universe. The FF and the N-Explorers returned to Earth, but neither noticed that upon his death, Annihilus's body had released a pod containing a baby clone of himself. The Fantastic Four later returned to the Negative Zone, where Reed Richards began planning to build a superhuman prison. By this point, the Reborn Annihilus had fully matured and, possessing both the memories and personality of his predecessor, attacked the FF in search of his cosmic control rod. However, it seems that Annihilus had spawned more than one clone, as this battle was interrupted by another who believed himself to be the true Annihilus. The Fantastic Four seized their opportunity to escape without seeing the end of the conflict, but one of the two ultimately emerged victorious and went on to reclaim the Cosmic Control Rod, reasserting his dominance over the Negative Zone once again. Annihilus also learned that the positive universe was slowly expanding into the Negative Zone. Using this as a rallying cry, he recruited followers from across the Negative Zone in preparation for a full-scale invasion. This included the Centurions, a group of 100 warriors with each one from a different planet. He also took a trio of queens, Erratica, Extermina, and Extirpia, to bolster his forces by mothering legions of insectivorids. The invasion began at the Crunch, an energy cascade that separated the Negative Zone from the positive universe. Dubbed the Annihilation Wave, Annihilus's armada pierced this barrier and launched an attack on the power generator system turned maximum security prison, the Kiln. Henceforth, the date of this attack would be called Annihilation Day. The destruction of the Kiln's Omega Core served as the opening salvo in the Annihilation War, and cut off the primary energy source for over 200 planetary systems. It also released two ancient proemial gods who had been imprisoned there by Galactus in the distant past, Aegis and Tenebrous. Over the following week, the Annihilation Wave crossed 25 star systems before reaching the Xandar Cluster. This was the home of the Nova Corps, a Xandarian militia who had expanded into an interstellar peacekeeping force. In the aftermath of Annihilation Day, the Nova Corps had called all available members back to Xandar to host an emergency summit. However, they were taken by surprise and almost completely wiped out by the Annihilation Wave. The only known corpsman to survive the attack was the human Nova, Richard Ryder. Following this, the Xandarian Worldmind joined with Ryder, making him the sole host of the Nova force that powered the Corps. Not only did this make him much more powerful, but it also gave him a fresh new uniform to regulate this energy. But the primary reason that Annihilus targeted Xandar was to track down wielders of the power cosmic, the energy that empowered Galactus and his various heralds. You see, for all the terror that he invoked, Annihilus was a being that was motivated by a pathological fear of any creature that he saw as a threat to his own survival. But if he could harness the power cosmic, then he could purge all such life, leaving only himself. And two of Galactus's former heralds, Firelord and Airwalker, were originally Xandarian. To find them, he dispatched a group of beings called the Seekers, living conduits of the opposing force, which is the negative zone equivalent of the power cosmic. In the meantime, Nova teamed up with another human hero, Wendell Vaughn, aka Quasar, who wielded a set of energy manipulating bracelets called the Quantum Bands. On Annihilation Day plus 11, the two battled the Annihilation Wave while the Akon colony on Nikos Aristides attempted to evacuate. However, Annihilus was able to siphon Nova's gravimetric power to enhance his cosmic control rod, and even succeeded in killing Quasar. With Wendell Vaughn dead, Annihilus was able to claim the quantum bands, making himself even stronger. On day plus 17, Annihilus's lead seeker, Ravenous, led an attack on the former Herald of Galactus, Airwalker, in the ruins of Xandar. Another former Herald, the Silver Surfer, intervened and escaped with their target, but the android Airwalker was already critically damaged. Over the following days, the Seekers had more success in subduing and capturing other Heralds, Tyrax, and Morg, the latter of which did not survive experimentation at the hands of Annihilus, who concluded that the power cosmic disappeared from the body once a wielder died. Meanwhile, the Annihilation Wave was carving a swath of destruction across the Skrull Empire in the Andromeda Galaxy. During this time, the Mad Titan, Thanos, forged an alliance with Annihilus, providing his forces with teleportation technology. However, Annihilus wasn't the only one to find allies, as the Silver Surfer teamed up with other former Heralds, Firelord and Red Shift. These three were then joined by Galactus's then-current Herald, Stardust, who came to inform the Surfer that he had been summoned by his former master. The situation culminated on day plus 21, when the Surfer agreed to once again serve Galactus in exchange for vastly increased power. This was largely done because Galactus recognized the threat of the Negative Zone's forces, as well as the return of his ancient enemies Aegis and Tenebris. Furthermore, weeks later, on day 40, Thanos approached the two Proemial gods and struck a deal with them. Meanwhile, the Annihilation Wave continued its assault on the Skrull Empire using a planet-destroying weapon called the Harvester of Sorrows. They were opposed by the Super Skrull, Kalurt, who ultimately sacrificed himself to destroy the weapon on day 68. However, the Wave continued their assault, bringing the Empire to near total destruction within the following month. After that, Annihilus detected new life being created in the outskirts between the territory of the Skrulls and that of their rivals, the Kree. This was a result of reality altering being conducted by the Glorian, who we briefly mentioned earlier as the son of Gregory Gideon. Drawing a number of powerful warriors to the remote world of Godthab Omega, Glorian utilized the energies released by their combat to enliven the desolate landscape. On Annihilation Day plus 95, Annihilus sensed this happening and sent his queen, Eradika, to lead a division of the Annihilation Wave and eliminate this new life. Over the following days, a number of warriors, including Ronan, Korath, Gamora, and Nebula, battled the invading Insectivorids. While Ronan defeated Eradicate, Glorian unleashed an attack that wiped out the rest of her fleet. However, the planet was left in ruins and Glorian himself was rendered catatonic. In the months after that battle, the full force of the Annihilation wave continued pressing towards Kree territory. On Annihilation Day plus 183, Thanos captured Moondragon, the daughter of Drax the Destroyer. He ripped off her left ear and gave it to her companion Phyla-Vell, instructing her to deliver it to Drax as a warning. Meanwhile, on the planet Daedalus 5, a number of space-faring warriors, including Nova, Star-Lord, Drax, Ronan, Gamora, Firelord, Redshift, and Stardust, joined forces with the local Kree and other aliens to form a resistance called the United Front. On Annihilation Day plus 204, they held off an assault from Queen Extirpia, who was taken prisoner by Firelord. However, while that battle was happening, the Proemial gods, Aegis and Tenebris, defeated Galactus and the Silver Surfer. As part of their bargain with Thanos, they turned these two over to the Annihilation Wave as prisoners. Unable to directly endow Annihilus with Galactus's power, Thanos constructed machines that effectively transformed the World Eater into a planet-destroying weapon. On day 212, Phyla-Vell arrived on Daedalus 5 to tell Drax what happened to Moondragon. That same day, the Seekers, the Centurions, and the parasitically enslaved Terrax the Tamer and Pybok the Power Skrull launched an attack on the United Front. The seemingly dead Super Skrull was miraculously revived during this battle, but it still wasn't enough to turn the tide as more and more of the Annihilation Wave bore down on them. When Annihilus used his Galactus weapon on the planet, Redshift and Stardust sacrificed themselves to stop the beam long enough for the remnants of the United Front to evacuate. While pockets of resistance continued, the United Front as a whole largely disbanded in the wake of this defeat. Meanwhile, Drax the Destroyer took his opportunity to infiltrate one of the Annihilation Wave's ships so that he could track down Thanos and rescue his daughter. On day 220, he killed Queen Eradicate and usurped control of her vessel to make his way closer to his target. Meanwhile, Thanos had Moondragon use her powers to read Annihilus's mind, and the two learned that he wanted to eliminate all life in both universes until he was the only thing left alive. Moondragon also learned that Thanos had put a backup plan into place as he was the only one capable of releasing Galactus. He intended on doing so and ruining Annihilus's plans, but before he could finish inputting the necessary sequence, he was interrupted and killed by Drax the Destroyer. While unable to unleash Galactus without Thanos, Drax succeeded in freeing the captive Silver Surfer. And through considerable effort, the Surfer was able to free his master, marking a turning point in the Annihilation War. On the planet Hala, the homeworld of the Kree, Ronan the Accuser and Kalurt the Super Skrull exposed the House Fiero government's treasonous alliance with Annihilus and overthrew their rule. In the ensuing battle, Ronan defeated the leader of the Seekers, Ravenous. Meanwhile, Annihilus's old rival, Blastaar, joined forces with Nova, Phyla-Vell, and the Space Knights of Galador. The tide truly turned on day 222 when Galactus obliterated Annihilus's flagship and most of the Annihilation Wave. Annihilus himself continued to lose power when the quantum bands abandoned him and instead bonded with Phyla-Vell, who then became the next Quasar. In the end, a thoroughly weakened Annihilus was killed by Nova, who got around his chitinous armored exoskeleton by reaching into his mouth and pulling out his throat. With his master dead, Ravenous assumed command of the remaining Insectivorids and sued for peace. 268 days after the Annihilation began, the Negative Zone's forces were granted a number of Kree territories in exchange for an end to hostilities. This was in addition to the innumerable Skrull territories they had already ravaged in the war. After this armistice day, Queen Extermina was taken to the seeded planet Kree-Lar, where she would give birth one final time. This was not like her usual egg-laying, but a unique birth that cost her her life. It seems that before his death, Annihilus had impregnated his final queen with yet another duplicate of himself, allowing him to be reborn once again. However, in the meantime, his cosmic control rod fell into the possession of another insectoid, Catastrophus. Seeking to prolong his reign, he took the infant Annihilus and returned to the Negative Zone, where he used the rod to slow his master's growth. However, his rule was cut short by the intervention of Talon and Razor, two members of the ancient fraternity of Raptors. As part of a larger scheme to affect the outcome of another conflict, the War of Kings, they subsequently sought an alliance with Blastaar and turned the cosmic control rod over to him. While Blastaar became the uncontested king of the Negative Zone, Ravenous continued ruling over the Annihilation Wave's territories in the positive universe. When he resisted the expansion of the Shi'ar Empire during the War of Kings, the insane Emperor Vulcan sent a powerful alien, the Strontian, to assassinate him. She was the same race as Gladiator, the praetor of the Shi'ar Imperial Guard, which we talked about in a previous video. Their battle was interrupted by a member of the reformed Nova Corps, Robert Ryder, the younger brother of the Prime Nova, Richard Ryder. At the same time, Blastaar arrived on Kree-Lar with the cosmic control rod in his hand and the Shi'ar Praetorians as his allies. He had come to assert his power over Ravenous, but upon speaking with his one-time ally, Nova, he agreed to stay his hand for 15 minutes while Richard helped his brother. In the midst of all of this, the War of Kings was coming to an end with the disappearance of Vulcan and the surrender of the Shi'ar. And so Nova maintained this peace by taking Ravenous into protective custody and allowing Blastaar to take control of the Annihilation Wave territory. Blastaar also began annexing more territory in the Negative Zone itself, including the superhuman holding facility that Mr. Fantastic had built there, Prison 42. He expanded that building into a city with defenses powered by the cosmic control rod. Meanwhile, the Reborn Annihilus steadily grew, soon reaching the equivalent of adolescence. As he did, he also slowly rebuilt his forces, bringing his armada to pre-Annihilation Day levels. While on Earth, insectivorids in human disguises started a cult of the Negative Zone called the Other Side of Zero. Posing as a beautiful woman, a swarm of insectivorids tricked Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, into letting them into the Baxter Building, where they accessed the Fantastic Four's Negative Zone portal. Using this, they slipped past Prison 42's defenses and sabotaged them with an explosive device. This allowed the rest of the Annihilation Wave to swarm over the facility and reclaim the cosmic control rod. Later, the cult of the Other Side of Zero succeeded in infiltrating the Baxter Building once again. With Reed and Sue away and Ben depowered, they were able to open the Negative Zone portal. In order to prevent a second Annihilation Wave invasion, the Human Torch sacrificed himself by staying in the Negative Zone and holding off Annihilus's forces while the portal was sealed behind him. With the cosmic control rod affixed to the top of an axe, Annihilus watched and commanded his troops. With no need to hold back, Johnny unleashed his hottest flames in an explosive Nova Blast that incinerated everything it touched. However, more and more insectoid forces bore down on him with no end in sight. It was a battle he couldn't win, and the torch was ultimately extinguished by Annihilus himself. Annihilus would not let Johnny stay dead, however, and went on to torture and resurrect him over and over again. His ultimate goal, of course, was to force him to unseal the Negative Zone portal so that the Annihilation wave could wash over the Earth. During his time in the Negative Zone, Johnny met a group of alien Inhumans called the Light Brigade. Like the Torch, these warriors were forced to fight in brutal gladiatorial battles against insectoid monsters until they were killed only to be put back together. During one of these matches, Johnny attempted to turn his flame on Annihilus, but not even his fire could burn hot enough to damage the living death that walks. Things started coming to a head when Annihilus plotted with the anti-priest of his Negative Zone cult at the other side of Zero, as well as a variant of Reed Richards who wished to use the Negative Zone as a way of returning to his own universe. Soon these forces were poised to open the portal in the Baxter building, unleashing a second Annihilation wave. Out of time and options, Johnny Storm and the Light Brigade launched a final, desperate attempt to stop Annihilus. This time, with the chips down, Johnny was able to seize the Cosmic Control Rod and with it, command over the Annihilation wave. He opened the portal and returned to Earth while the planet was being invaded by a Kree armada. Calling forth and commanding the Annihilation wave, Johnny helped turn the tide in that particular battle. Annihilus, meanwhile, was chained and enslaved and remained on Earth under Johnny's supervision. For a while, things were peaceful as Johnny used the Cosmic Control Rod to maintain dominance over the Annihilation wave. However, the legions of insectivorids grew displeased with his rule and demanded the opportunity to elect their own leader. Accepting this, Johnny allowed the election to go ahead and ran against 3 of the Annihilation Wave's generals. What he didn't expect was for a write-in candidate to win by over 14 trillion votes. Returning to the head of the Annihilation Wave, this time as a duly elected leader, Annihilus ruled over the denizens of the Negative Zone as he had done before. He sometimes met with other galactic leaders to discuss important matters, like when Jason of Spartax proposed a ban on any further alien interaction with Earth. In instances like this, he often used a robotic replica of his previous form to act as a stand-in. He lacked the Cosmic Control Rod, but joined a group assembled by Dr. Doom with the goal of getting it back. Doom subsequently provided him with a replacement, ostensibly from another universe, but Annihilus claimed that there was only one Negative Zone. Considering the implications if this were in fact the case, Doom betrayed Annihilus and claimed the rod for himself. But whether or not the claim is correct, Doom was eventually defeated by a group of the Fantastic Four's allies. Meanwhile, no longer possessing the territory he had won in the Annihilation War, Annihilus attacked the planet Praxis II and converted its stargates into a portal to the Negative Zone. Becoming his new foothold in the positive universe, this planet was renamed Annihilation World. Regaining his Cosmic Control Rod yet again, Annihilus also came up with a way of restoring his full size and strength. In fact, by capturing and studying the Hulk, he was able to make himself even larger and more intimidating. Physically stronger than he had ever been, and with the might of the Cosmic Control Rod back in his grasp, Annihilus had reclaimed his full stature and continued to be the undisputed and unquestioned ruler of the Negative Zone. The head of the Annihilation Wave and the scourge of galaxies, Annihilus, the living death that walks. And that is all I have for you this week, but thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it on your favorite social media. As always, the issues referenced in this video are listed in the description below if you would like to read them for yourself, as well as links to other places you can find me. Let me again give a special shout out to all of my Patreon and Ko-fi supporters, Twitch subscribers, and YouTube members who help make the channel possible. By signing up for any amount on any of these platforms, you'll get your name in these special thanks here. But Patreon is the one that helps determine what topics get covered on the channel via monthly polls. And if there's anything in particular that you want to hear about, then let me know in the comments below. But that is indeed all I have for you this week, and so until next time, true believers, Excelsior!